jump right in. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a new video. I have a very interesting guest with me today. It's none other than Dan Wright, also known as Paul Bearer of Toxic Zombies and Hornet and Fusecon. And it's very exciting for me to be interviewing Dan because Dan was one of the figures that I really saw as like a reference when I was starting on the demo scene. As I started doing different demo scene related projects, Dan was one of the person that were like promoting the demo scene so much in different ways, like not just making demos, which is a very important thing to do, but more than making demos, you were like archiving and talking about them and finding ways to bringing more awareness to them. And I always found that fascinating. So it's a big honor for me to talk with you live. And I have a few questions, and I hope you're interested to go down memory lane a little bit for the next few minutes.
Shoot.
So, first things first. How are you doing? Everything good? Well, what do you do? What do you do for a living nowadays?
So these days I have a bachelor's of electrical engineering and an MBA as well. And these days I do project management type work or program management for a company that makes batteries. So we're in the battery industry, and many of those batteries go into data centers. So
okay, cool.
That's pretty much what I do, manage the projects.
Okay.
So not too much different from what I was doing a long time ago in demos, right? Just kind of an organizer.
That's what I was going to ask. How much was your demo scene work or demo scene related work like lead you into project management? Because for me, it feels like it overlaps a lot, like that you learn a lot of soft skills that really help you in project management a lot.
Absolutely. Well, started off in the University of Florida with the electrical engineering degree and did that for a good 10 to 20 years. And then the last 10 or so has been more in project management, but I do enjoy it, and it's been an evolution. So I'd say, yeah, probably kind of back to the roots, kind of, there's always kind of this niche that you want to try to find. And I think I found that with not doing the hardcore work, though I do like a little bit of that, but the project management side, definitely it's a better fit for me.
Nice. Okay, so starting your demo scene stuff, when did you first got acquainted with the computer? What was your first computer? How did you got involved with computers at all?
So the first computer would be a Commodore 128. And the time frame I think is I want to say Christmas of 1985. I could be off a year, could be 1986. So it's quite a long time ago. And then when you get the computer, you don't get very much, right? You just kind of get a computer. And so the next evolution was, well, I got to buy a game here, buy a game there. And then found out about this thing called BBS, Bulletin Board Systems.
Was there a lot of BBSs for the Atari back then, or was it more? Because I heard that it's more of a Commodore 64 thing.
I think it was a mix. Atari, there's Apple BBSs. There were Commodore 64 BBSs, maybe less so, but they were just general BBSs.
Like they had all of the different platforms at the same time?
They did. And then eventually, again, 1985, 1986, maybe not so much. I forget when I got that first modem, and it was 300 baud. So a lot of them were text based, and then they started going kind of text ANSI kind of graphics based. And so you'd find one, and I forget how I found it, maybe through friends in school, found one, and then that one would have a list of other ones, and that one, and then you just call around, and mostly it's locally because the expense of calling long distance, or you're talking say 15, 20 cents, 25 cents a minute back then. There was tolls for calling.
Yeah, a lot of horror stories from people who were into computer stuff who suddenly got like a month's bill that was just astronomical. And a lot of talks also of blue boxing and stuff like that, trying to get access for free so you could get all of the latest stuff from the different places and from abroad as well? Did you ever call abroad, or was everything always like more locally?
I may have a little bit, but I wasn't. I was never. How shall we say, like a trader or
Hmm.
into the piracy scene. I mean, I was, you just automatically became a part of that and tried to get your own wares, and then that was kind of my introduction. Is somebody had a game, or I'd download a game from a bulletin board system, and it would have an intro, and that's kind of my first intake into demos. And so I saw the intro. I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. That's almost as good as the game itself. I mean, you can't play it. And then that led to, how do I find more of these? And then eventually led me to connecting up with other people who were in part of that scene, either the piracy and trader scene, and they'd put the intros on, or it was into the demo scene and talking to somebody, usually somebody overseas, to say, hey, can you send me these demos? Can we trade, or what can we do? And we would write and trade, and they would kind of help me. Also, I started learning to code and trying to code my own demos back then on the Commodore 64, not necessarily the 128, because the 128
Hmm.
would work as a 64. And so I was able to meet people that way and trade, but
Did
a
you ever
lot.
release any Commodore demo?
I did. There were a few demos. I had a
Nice.
disc. Yeah. Under different names. They were pretty terrible though. So I
Because I
did.
only heard of you from the PC scene, so it's very curious to me. Like, I have a very abstract idea of how the United States scene happened. I heard that it was very much focused on Commodore 64, Apple
Mhm.
II, and then there were a
Yeah.
lot of ANSI and ANSI and
Yep.
ASCII stuff, and also a lot of tracker scene was very heavy, and that was sort of what steamrolled thing. So it's very interesting to hear your direct take, because you lived the thing. So yeah. So was this
And
early '90s when you started getting into that?
a lot of this was late 80s. So as I was finishing high school, 87, 88, 89,
Hmm.
and then I went to college, and then I was still doing some in that. And I knew one of the guys from a group called the Survivors. They were a group that did the cracking of the wares, and they had a guy, the distributor, lived near me. So I became pretty good friends with him, and he worked with the other guys out of like Canada and other parts of the US, and they would get the wares, and he would distribute it. And it was always interesting. He had he, or maybe the Survivors, had a slogan. It's like 7 days with no wares makes 1 week. It was pretty funny.
How was the crackdown on the piracy? Because here in Portugal we had, like, piracy was the status quo for a very long time, until, like, we didn't even had laws to protect
Uh,
that until late, I want to say early 90s, like 91, 92, maybe. I'm not sure on the exact dates, but can you tell me a little bit of when the system started changing in the United States, when they became more strict on people having to have their own original stuff?
I definitely in those 80s time frame, and I saved some articles. I had one guy I knew who went to Florida State, and he ended up getting, he had one of those BBSs with the piracy stuff going on, and he also traded credit cards and did the phone freaking stuff. And
Yeah, that was a lot more.
he-
Police paid
that's
more
got
attention to that, to credit card
that
fraud, than wear stuff.
that's where they got him, and I think it was the credit card stuff, and that fraud, and maybe the phone, the long distance calling. So they ended up cracking down on him, probably took down his BBS, and he went to jail or prison for a while. I think, again, this is probably late 80s, maybe early 90s. And then the other guy who was for the Survivors, he ended up also getting busted. We were going to have a big, huge trading party. The party was it's set for the weekend, and he got taken down before that. And it's like, I was so thankful, because they could have waited, because they were probably following him and monitoring all the chatter on the
Yeah, they could have
boards.
done at the party and got everyone
They
there.
they could have done it at the party, and and gotten the whole piracy thing going and charged everybody with whatever at that time, but they didn't. They took them down that week, the week just before the party, and thank goodness, they did it then, because at the party, then the piracy would have been involved. And I don't recall them really cracking down hard on that at that time. I think they were going after other frauds. He did a lot of long distance stuff as
Mm.
well. And I don't know if there were credit cards involved or what they got him for. I'd have to look back at my notes, but those are the two people when they were local, and I knew them both, and they went down, and I was like, whoa, everybody else is like hanging low, just got to be careful, get rid of whatever you got, clean house. Things were, again, it just depended. They went after the big players, and they took a few of them down. But that was, again, probably the late 80s. And then in the 90s, 88 to about 92, and into 93, that's when I went to college for the electrical engineering degree.
That's when you started DemoNews, was already in 92. I see here the first issue was
Yes,
24 September 92. So I guess,
92.
when did you switch to PC?
So that would have been in college. Probably I started to learn and use the PCs in college for reports and stuff, and also the Macs there. Right in that 1989 to 90 and 91 and even into 92 timeframe. So, and then my roommates ended up getting a PC around, I want to say, that same time. I don't think I had a PC. I think he had a PC and I used it. I had the Commodore and used that a little, but then I left that back at home. But that kind of, in that time frame, I was also into the zine scene as well. Did my own zine. I don't know, you probably saw my website with Fathoms below. So between like 89 to 91, 92, I did a zine. And then when he had the PC, then we started to learn about the intros and the demos there, and what assembly was and those type of things. And then that's what kind of evolved me into this. Let's kind of start the demo
Did
news.
you use your computer to make your zine, or was it completely like handwritten and photocopied?
It was a combination. I used the Macs at the school to do a lot of it, and then I did, print and hand paste and then copy. So it was the old traditional kind of way, and you can see the evolution as it goes forward. They get more and more like professional, or
Technical, yeah.
layout gets much better after I did 5 of those over 2.5 years or whatever it was.
I read an interview with you that you were, one of the reasons that you started DemoNews was because you already had that zine experience, and then when you noticed that the demoscene stuff was happening,
Mm.
you had the idea to create this DemoNews. So can you tell us what was the point of DemoNews? Why did you create DemoNews? That's the question.
Probably, again, a lead up from the zine. It's kind of the filling that gap there. So that would be probably one reason. And the second reason is, I wanted to get demos, and there was really, it's like, where am I going to get these demos from? And so starting up that whole website, well, I wouldn't call it a website. It's more like an FTP site, right? On the University of
Server.
Florida. Yeah. So University of Florida had this server out there, and there were transaction of piracy on that same server, and I decided to create and you're probably familiar with the demo news and the story. I decided to create my own little web link in there, and there's, okay, you can go into my directory, or you can go into this piracy directory, which is 9 spaces, kind of hard to follow. You get in there, they're kind of right next to one another, and I guess if you're sophisticated enough, you could find both of them. So I created my own and then posted online, on one of those news servers, about, hey, go, put your demos here, and we have demos, and we had a couple of them, so we put a couple of them there, and then people would go and put their new demos there, and then I would get those demos and review them and put it in the demo news. So it's really a way of trying to get demos myself.
But
And
you
then
didn't have, like, you were not in control of the server. It just existed publicly.
it existed publicly at that university. And the problem was when I posted that link, people knew somehow people from that university were monitoring all this stuff, right? So I ended up getting in trouble for this. And they came down on me and they said, "Hey, did you know about?" Well, yeah, I knew about it. I didn't create that. That wasn't me, but it was somebody else who did it. Yeah, it was some kind of interesting stuff in there,
But
but
did you just create a directory there, or did you have to actually have like root access or backdoor access
no,
of some sort to create stuff?
anybody could create directories there.
Mm.
Anybody could do whatever. That's how it's almost like somebody hacked in that site to drop wares, and then I put
I
the
see.
demo site, and anybody could do whatever they want. They could create directories and
So once
do
they
that.
caught you, how did you convince them to still be able to use the server for demoscene trading stuff?
Oh, that's a good question. And my memory is going to be a little foggy there, but what they did is it was in through the electrical engineering department. They kind of brought me in, and then they threatened to bring me to the cops for all this. They did. I mean, and they were gonna do that, and they were gonna kick me out. And luckily, they didn't do either. I guess they believed that it wasn't me who created it. I said, no, that's not me. What I wanted is the demos, and those are completely legal, and there's nothing wrong with them. And so after that meeting, I don't know whether they told me, hey, they may have directed me because somehow I found out who was running that. And then I worked with them and said, hey, I'd like to get, some space of my own to be able to collect these demos and not get they could lock it down however they want and give me an account. And somehow it worked out that I was able to get access. Maybe they tightened up the system so there would be no more wares. And then we were able to get the demos on a different I think it was a different server. And then the link was legit and everything was up and up from there on out. And if anybody did try to put any piracy there, then I would kill it. So kind of lessons learned, and almost got kicked out of school that was my last year of college there.
Wow,
So
that would have been a
yeah,
big blow. Yeah.
it would have been huge because I had, I was 4 years in and this is my fifth year. And then, where do I go? And I had to transfer all the credits and take other classes.
So they
That,
were nice in the end. They were nice. They believed you above all else, which is
yeah,
a
that
lot of
was,
people don't have that benefit of the doubt, So
these days, I think it would have been, you would have been gone. They were, people tended to be more forgiving then. So that was nice.
hmm. We also were in the beginning of like the internet and stuff like that, so people didn't really know the full capabilities of hacking and all of that stuff, of all the nefarious things that you can do. They were more
Yep.
accepting of kids doing stupid shit
Crazy
because they
things.
could.
They
Yeah.
did, absolutely. And it was just amazed me how they found this. It's on a news server. I mean, this is a big news server, but maybe they just kind of search. Somebody's always out there searching and finding things, and to find that post and to show you that post and say, here's what you posted. This is what you said. And it's like, oh geez, how'd you guys find that? That's amazing. Whoops.
So you had that server, you started running DemoNews to get
Mm.
stuff onto that server. How did DemoNews and that server ended up becoming Hornet and related to Hornet?
So I ran it a year and then some. As I was graduating and moving on, I had to pass it along to somebody else and try to find somebody. And the first person who I passed it to, he maintained it a little, but not quite as good. And, again, I know what you're kind of doing with your stuff in the background, and you're doing essentially a demo news report through video, your vlog or however you want to call it. It takes a lot of time to do this. I was spending, I don't know, 20 hours a week or whatever it is in my spare time putting out the demo news and then working with others, getting these demos, reviewing them and stuff like that. And It was, again, mostly me, but then as I built up the toxic zombies, and we built up that group, and other people would be able to contribute, and other people did contribute over the year to DemoNews, and then it expanded, and more people over time. But so the first person I found to hand it off to, they didn't do such a good job. And at that time I had left the university and I was done, just kind of monitoring it on the side. And then I said, hey, it's you seem to be struggling here. You're not doing a good job. It's not being kept up. Maybe we could find somebody else. So then I put in a plea, hey, can somebody else help out? And eventually Christopher Mann came on board, and he ended up taking it over, and he even did better than me, which I was like, wow, this guy, we found the right person, going through. And he was
Christopher Mann, is that Snowman or Gene?
Snowman,
Snowman.
Yeah. And then he was going to school in Ohio, somewhere in Ohio, I think. And he did it for a while, and then I think it opened up connections for him, and he's the one who actually got it transferred over to the next place, wherever it was going to. And I
didn't
think
know it got transferred. I thought it was always on the same place. That's cool.
It got transferred to like CDROM.com or something like that.
I thought it was just like a new domain or rename or something like that.
There were some domains, and I think at University of Florida had like those bugs. It was like WASP or something, and then .hornet. I think it was like those are the domain, ftp.ufl.wasp, whatever it was, .edu. And eventually he was able to get it transferred over to cdrom.com, and he went to work for them. I think he left school early and went to work for him out of California, Walnut Creek or something. It ended up his whole transition in life was because of DemoNews. Interestingly enough, I mean, had he not joined DemoNews, he probably would have never, made that connection over there and had the server and had it on CD-ROM. And then eventually they made a whole CD of essentially the server, the demo server and stuff. And because that's kind of what they did. They took a collection of
they made CDs out of it to distribute it.
Yeah, and then they did a CD on this. I don't know if they ever made any money, but he was able to get the whole thing moved over, because who knows how long the University of Florida would have kept it on their servers. They were kind of grumbling.
This is so weird, because nowadays you think like sending a physical media, why would anyone bother to do that? And because back then internet was expensive, and it wasn't everyone who had internet, so it was very useful to have like a collection, even just a backup, so you wouldn't have to keep downloading. Also, your hard drives, your personal hard drives, were a lot lower as well, and very expensive to get. A gigabyte was insane to get back then.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And I have a whole collection of CDs that people did at that time, and maybe I'd go grab them and show you. But the CD was huge. I mean, it was really, really massive, with everybody's coming out with their CD and stuff like that. And that's kind of where the next evolution for me was doing Escape, and with Christopher. He was a great partner in that, because he did the music contest, right? And I kind of like this zine stuff in the background, like doing that and layout and graphics and stuff. So kind of worked really well from that standpoint, moving to the next evolution of what we were going to do.
So did you do CDs of all of? I remember there was one CD in particular that had both audio and the data files. That was that for music contest?
Yeah. That it started with Escape, and that was a music contest, and it had both. It was kind of this multimedia CD, where it can do music and you can get data off it. And then the next one was the next evolution, became Freedom. It's kind of funny.
Escape and Freedom.
Yeah. So then Freedom became kind of this more of kind of the same thing, music contest on one of them, and then all the demos on the next one. So it was a 2 CD set.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, I think there might have been another music contest, and then I kind of didn't do that, and then did Audiophonic with Jeff from
Yeah.
Infobia.
We'll get to that in a while. For those who don't know what music contest is, there were a lot of tracker competitions happening. A tracker in the sense of a tracker modules. So for people who are completely oblivious to what demoscene is and tracker music is, tracker music is a format of making music for the computer that tries to take very small space. So MP3s did not exist back then, so people had to do this tracker formats, and you shared samples around, and there were some competitions like calls for submitting your entry, sometimes with a specific sample pack, sometimes it was just open. And one of the most famous competitions back then in the 90s was the music contest, and there had like several categories like amateur, professional, veteran, I think was the name of the top tier category. So like everyone submitted to music contest. There were like hundreds of tracks released there. It's really like the height, like the top quality tracker musicians of the entire demo scene and tracker music scene would be submitting to music contest every single. Was it monthly that you organize it, or bi-monthly, something like
Ooh,
that? Don't
it
remember
was
anymore.
it was Christopher who did most of that, and I think it was pretty much yearly. He would do a
Yearly,
yearly
okay, that makes
contest.
sense
Yeah.
because there weren't that many overall. So
And
yeah,
give me 1 second. I'm going to get some of these, pull them off the
yeah,
shelf.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
bring it
Go
over
for
here.
it. I'm trying to look up the music contest thing, but of course it's hard to find.
All
So
right.
you got some?
I've got a few, mostly mine. I did bring another one. There's a lot of like, this one's somebody else's C64 back in time. This one has 1997 on it. I really love it that other people did this stuff and did music for Commodore 64s and the PCs. And Bjorn Lynn was one of them who did a lot of them. Let's see, here is
Yeah,
Escape,
Escape.
and then it had the back. And then I always liked the uniqueness with the colors that we did on the CD and prints. So that was the first one. Then we did Freedom. The cover came out a little darker. The guy in the back, and we would always try to get a lot of different artists in the scene, whoever, to help us out. One of the CDs, and then you flip it around, and then you get the second one.
Mm-hmm.
We try to make this as artistic as demos
It
themselves.
has a very 90s aesthetic to it.
And then with
Yeah,
Jeff,
Audiophonic.
the
I have that
Audiophonic.
in that one in my bedroom.
Yeah, this one we really, I think, hit the next level with this one. This one
That one
really
was a collaboration with Infobia. So I remember there was a lot
yes.
of back and forth between DemoNews and Infobia back then, because Infobia had the disc mag that was like the biggest
Yeah.
disc mag there were, and DemoNews was the most famous newsletter that
Mhm.
existed back then. So these were like the two main sources of information in the demo scene. If you wanted to know what was happening, this month in the demo scene, you'd read latest Infobia, you would check the latest demo news, and you were up to date with the things that were happening in the scene. And I remember you getting a lot of shit for like commercializing the demo scene already back then, just for doing these CDs, even before you reaching Mindcandy, which I remember
Mm.
you also got some shit for that. Even
Oh,
just these CDs were already it's just like professional stuff, and demo scene is a hobby thing. So we're skipping a bit of order here because I wanted to
yeah.
talk about Assembly 95, but let's talk about the importance of these CDs. Like, why do you feel that they were important to have? Like, you didn't get rich out of selling these CDs.
No,
So,
certainly not.
what was the original point behind making these physical things that not that many other people were making the demo scene back then?
Well, it was one was to just exposure, get it out there to more people. Um, the demo scene is a pretty small collective of people, but if you can do a CD and get it picking up by whoever, then you could spread the word a little easier. Again, the same thing with the media. You put the files out there so people can have access to it, because maybe people aren't going to go and try to surf for demos at that time. So I think it's more exposure to other people to really broaden the scope. But again, we mostly sold it to people in the demo scene,
Yeah,
right? We
which is a
never
bit of a
got
countersense.
never got picked up by any major label or anything like that, but that really wasn't the intent. And it was just me, and I set up the company and Fusecon to kind of distribute it or hand distribute it, and people from the contest would get, they get 5 or whatever, however many, and then they can distribute it to their friends and so on. But really the idea was just to spread, to be able to, get the word out. And that was kind of it. That was a lot of what we were trying to do with DemoNews, and then try to get magazines to pick up stories and get the word out and let people know about this interesting type of art. And I considered it really art, and art and entertainment, if you want. It's a just different scope, and you do watch, and then you can participate and you can do your own. And it's again, that was pretty much the objective, is to get it out there. And we weren't making that many of these things. I forget how many. I probably said it somewhere in the DemoNews, maybe a couple hundred, whatever. A couple hundred of Escape, a couple hundred of Freedom, probably 1,000 of Audiophonik. That one probably we made the most of, I'm guessing. I don't know.
How did going to demo parties influence the work that you were doing at DemoNews? Because there weren't that many demo parties in the United States back then, and when you started, there were none. I hear your first demo
Yeah,
party was Assembly 93. Is this
that
correct?
that would be right. Yeah, Assembly 93.
So
There was
why
nothing.
going all the way to Finland for a demo party? You just wanted to see for your own eyes what it was like?
So I guess kind of you could say the stars kind of aligned for that. So I was ending college, and a lot of people take a break as they end college. They kind of do, oh, let's go to Europe. It's kind of the old do the European tour, backpacking kind of
Yeah,
tour
that's a very
thing.
American thing. In Europe, we don't do that.
It just seemed kind of weird. It's like you see all these movies and all that stuff, and
Now I'm
everybody's
gonna
always,
see the world for a
oh, but
year
it's
before I
right.
decide what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life.
Exactly, right? You take the break. I don't know what maybe it is just American thing. So the idea was, okay, I'm done with school. Good. This assembly is coming up. Maybe that's something interesting I can go to. And then, so in Toxic Zombies was Pascal. Pascal lived in France. And then we met up with one other guy, Adam, um, maybe some others, but we tried to say, hey, I'm going to go to assembly, and Pascal was all into that. He was, yep, good. Come over here and we'll do this. And I'm okay. I'm not sure about this, but we're going to do it. And then Adam came along with us and brought some camping equipment as well as a camera, so he could record some of it. Um, but the
You
other thing,
actually did you do a report out of the trip?
oh yeah, there's definitely a report.
I
You
haven't
saw
seen that. I haven't
you
seen
haven't
that.
seen it's on the website. You didn't see the assembly. Let's see,
Oh, I have to see that. No, I
is it
didn't.
on?
Must have skipped it.
Oh, Assembly 93. Yeah, it's on my website, fusecon.com.
Okay, I'll
Um,
definitely check it out.
so a couple things of note. my mom also worked for the airlines, right? So I
Cheap
still have these,
flights.
yep, cheap flights. So I was able to, she was retired at that time, I think, but I was able to take advantage as a student one last time to be able to make that flight out. And then with Pascal and Adam, we ended up driving all the way to Finland, um, taking a couple ferries over. And it was just kind of interesting because there's this one quote in the story, and the guy goes, "You don't have your ticket to get to Helsinki?" He goes, "No, we're going to just get the ticket when we get to the ship." He's like, "Well, you better get your ticket because you might not be able to get on board." So
Yeah.
we were in Sweden halfway to the next port to leave to Helsinki, and we were able to luckily get a ticket because we had a car, so we had to ship the car, but we didn't have a bedroom at all. We couldn't get a bedroom, but we found some people that were also going, and they let us
You didn't
sleep in there.
really need to take the car all the way to Finland. You could have left it in Stockholm and catch the
Yeah, well,
ferry. Like, what do
I,
you need a car for in Helsinki?
because you had to get to the party place wasn't in the city proper. They don't
Well,
have that.
well, at that time, everybody had to take the computers with them, which was
Yeah,
not a laptop. Not a
right.
laptop. It was heavy
So
duty stuff.
we did that, and it was mostly Adam and Pascal driving because I didn't really know how to drive stick at that time. I kind of did a little bit, but it's two guys really driving, me in the back seat, being the backseat driver. So it was a fun trip, and a pretty different world there in Finland, to see that and to see the demos and to meet everybody. It's quite the trip.
And Assembly 93 was such an iconic demo party to begin with. So I guess it must have made a big impression on you.
It did, and meeting everybody and meeting the future crew there, and yeah, when you saw the final three demos, all of them were equally as good. They were just really impressive. And one of the things that I thought was unusual is people would drink soda there, and they would just get it out of the store, and they drink warm soda. In America, nobody drinks warm soda. That's
It
like
needs to be cold, yeah.
so it's just kind of an unusual cultural differences there.
Yeah, Finland is very culturally unique, let's call it that. Anyways, then back in the United States, you went to NATE party. Were you involved in organizing whatsoever, or were you just there for as a visitor?
Just there as a visitor, did not participate in any organization. But the good thing about that was got to meet Christopher Snowman and Jim and Gravedigger and so many others there. I
Well, when
think.
was Hornet founded? Was before 95, right? As a
Um,
group.
yeah, I believe it was because I think they came there with the Hornet shirts. I don't even know if I ever got a Hornet shirt because I was kind of on the way, kind of out. If I did, it was more of an honorary member. But
I see August 94 was the first Hornet release. So yeah, probably
okay,
already. So you were an honorary Hornet member at that point?
if I was considered anything, but if they, as part of releases and groups things, no, because I had already passed off the DemoNews and the site and everything else to Christopher, and him and Jim and whoever organized that. So
I had a question here to follow up, like trying to ask why DemoNews ended and Hornet closed the archive, but you were already
mhm.
not part of the process. But do you remember the reasons why they decided to close? Because it was such a like an iconic resource, especially for the PC scene,
Mhm.
that it just felt so weird. Like, why are they just closing? They're doing such a good job.
You mean like University of Florida type, the web server, or are you talking Hornet in general and everything that was
The
going
archive.
on?
Well, Hornet is
Uh,
still active. Trickster just
uh,
released a demo last year, so
Oh
Hornet
yeah,
as a
I don't.
group is still active.
Right. Oh, you mean the whole demo news and stuff?
Yeah,
Is that
DemoNews and the server, the FTP server itself, because they ended about the same time, around 98, I believe.
well?
And
Yeah, that's
scene.org was picking up 1 year before. So
it. Probably ended with Christopher and him making the next move in his life, right? So he went to work for the CD-ROM Works company and whatever they were doing, and who was going to take it up next. They were going to say, hey, you can continue to use our server space, and he probably made the jump to another job, and then that probably kind of ended that. No, we're not going to hold on to this very long. So I'm guessing it was mostly that reason.
Because I remember at some point Hornet was just like a mirror at FTP CDROM.com.
Mhm.
And I guess that's because of Snowman being relocated at CDROM. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think we would have to get the story from him there
Yeah,
at that time.
I'm gonna contact him, see if I can interview him as well. That would be cool. Yeah. So how involved were you with DemoNews after you passed it along? Were you still like following, contributing regularly, or you just started like slipping away from the demo scene at this point?
to some degree slipping away, but it's always there in the background, because then the evolution with Mindcandy, right, coming out.
When was the
And
first Mindcandy?
let's see the date on this.
I think it was 2000, wasn't it?
It says 2002.
Okay.
So yeah,
I
you're
remember
pretty
meeting
close.
Phoenix as he was at Assembly, but he was
Mm.
already looking for the second, was promoting the first one, but was already working on the second, something like that. I remember
Are
getting
you
him in
sure?
touch with Feather because Feather did the artwork for some of
Yes.
them.
Do you, was it him, or was it because this one was, let's see if the date, they came out about 2 years apart. This one's 2006. They just took a long time, and then the last one we did, yeah, Feather. This artwork I thought was a little too dark, but we had to get it out, and we wanted 2011 is the date on this. So yeah, 2, 6, and 11 this is quite a gap in between all of these. But yeah, we all, most of us went to Breakpoint.
To promote it back then.
Yeah, to try to
Breakpoint
promote.
2003, maybe.
What's the date? Well, was it 2000? I think it would have been, yeah, probably somewhere in there. I'd have to look back at my notes. That was also pretty interesting. That was in Germany. We went with Jeremy, who did the video. We had to have him because he's the guy who did the featurettes, which is just incredible job. When Mindcandy 1 came out and that featurette, and oh my gosh, I think that was like the pinnacle. And then that thing took off. We sold a lot of Mindcandy 1s, and then Mindcandy 2 when we switched to Amiga, not as much. And then Mindcandy 3 we switched to the Blu-ray. I still got like 500 of those left.
Okay.
It's
I will take some of those to give away as prizes at the next Inertia demo party, if you don't mind.
yeah. Just let me know, and I'll ship them over there. Or
So, did that
yeah.
demotivate you a little bit from organizing more Mind Candies? Like, why did you stop at 3? I mean, such a time
So
gap has passed since then, and you could also done, I don't know, Atari, Commodore 64, whatever.
And that was the thoughts. We had a list of like 7 or 8 of these we wanted to do, and that would be other platforms. It would have been Commodore 64 was one of the platforms as well.
Was the
And
physical medium starting to not be so appealing anymore? That kind of died it
that
because, I mean, not that many people had Blu-rays.
I think that played a big part. As we wanted to go to the next evolution. So you do a one DVD, and then you do the DVD, the next DVD, the dual layer DVD, and then you go to the Blu-ray. They had different. You could run the Blu-ray at 1080p or 720p, and we ran it at 720p. But the big thing, and this is what everybody was saying as we were getting ready to release this, and it was taking forever. They were saying, "Oh, the streaming is going to take over.
Yeah.
Everybody's going streaming. It's YouTube. Put it on YouTube. Nobody's going to buy this." And
It could have
that
done
ended
both
up
because YouTube has lower quality, so you could
at
still sell some copies.
at the time, yeah. Nowadays, it's, people do 4K on YouTube, but
Yeah.
it's the the problem was, I think everybody was right. They saw the streaming thing, and we got these on. The first two were definitely on Netflix. I think if you had a Netflix account, you could have
Really?
rented.
On
Yeah,
Netflix?
on
Wow.
Netflix. Look and see if it's still there. It was. We were able to make a pretty good connection, and they helped distribute the CD or the DVDs, and they got it onto Netflix. Two of them, the first two. I don't think the third one ever made it there.
Wow.
Um,
Didn't know
but
this.
the
But they are also available now. If you go to scene.org, there are the mirrors there, like official dumps of
yeah,
these. I don't. I think the third is not there yet, but we're probably planning to have it.
we could. I mean, it's 50 gigs. It's a dual layer Blu-ray, so
Yeah, I can see
I
why
don't.
it's not there.
It's um, but so the problem ended up happening on the third one. We had great success in the first one. We had to reprint it like 3 times, and then the second one, well, we just sold out. I think we made 1,000 or 2,000. We only made 2,000 of those, and then the third one we made 2,000. I forget the exact numbers. It's out there probably online. But second one sold, and then we said, we got to do a third one. We did the third one, and it was just taking forever. And when we did get it out there, it just didn't. It sold initially pretty good, and then it didn't sell out. I mean, again, I think we pressed 2,000 of them. I still got 500 in my garage
Hmm.
here, and it's like I got to get rid of these. It's plus you have to, the encryption stuff. You have to have a key, and you have to pay licensing and stuff.
And one of the things that people sometimes don't realize that you had to license all of these things. Like you went to every single person and asked them for permission to have that. And like some
Yeah.
demos had sampling materials. I remember when Mega Blast was playing, like you don't have the starting sample. Why don't you have the starting? It's not the same demo without the starting sample. So like for me, it was like, okay, I'm not playing the Mindcandy version because it doesn't have the starting sample.
Yeah, there were, Jim, and that there was a lot of discussions between all of us on what we, try to make it legit and try to do everything to
And that's a
not
lot of
violate
work
the
because there's a lot of
Yeah.
people to contact. Some people don't reply. So,
There was one demo I really loved and wanted to get on there, and I think it was an intro for a party where a group. It's actually the physical group singing the song, and I tried to get permission from them, and they was like,
mm,
no. But we did the best we could to avoid any of those conflicts, and same with all the groups, and say, okay, well, we'll give you 10 of these DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever, to have your thing on it, and we're going to sell this many. If we ever repress it, we'll let you know. And so, and everybody was pretty good, and we had them sign agreements, and but the end of the era kind of came when we realized we're not selling that many, and everybody had their own kind of life and their kids and their
mhm.
family and jobs and everything else to take care of. And even the last one was a struggle. I had just finished my MBA in between the release of Mindcandy 2 and Mindcandy 3, and I was just impressed. That was one of my goals, is we got to get this thing out. And that's one of the little projects I did as part of the MBA. Hey, I do this stuff on the side as a hobby, and this is the next one. It's coming. But it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 5 years to between. It's And then after that we said, probably the next one will be in another 10 years. But no, it wasn't to be. And I think if we could make it and kind of make some money back on it, and it basically pay for itself, then we would do it. But
Mhm.
we've liquidated all the funds to everybody, and it's done. We don't plan on doing anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's sad, but I can understand the
Pass
reasons.
the torch, right? I mean,
Yeah.
now it's somebody else's turn, and I know people do. I see CDs sometimes. Mostly, I'm seeing books these days. People are doing a lot of books, which is kind of
Mm.
nice.
Like pixel artwork and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There've been quite a few of them out. Um, what do you feel about? You talked about streaming a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, do you feel that this gap of the physical media and limited stuff that we used to have, the newsletters, the disc
Mhm.
mags, how are they represented nowadays? Is it because there have been a few projects in the demo scene to do, YouTube channels, podcasts, not that many, not as
Mhm.
many as you would think, considering how much stuff was done in the demo scene back then in the 90s. So, is that the future, or do you feel like that is like um, we are? What do I want to ask? I want to ask if you feel like that's the way to go, or if it just
Mhm.
feels like we are fanning the flames and hoping that somehow the demo scene bubbles back up again and has more activity back again. But like we're fighting a dying battle against our nostalgia values of things. So how do you feel about YouTube and podcast systems overall to talk about the demo scene and bring more attention back to the demo scene and popularize it?
I I think that's a good thing. Um, Part of the problem with a lot of these demos, especially the old ones, is you couldn't really watch it on today's machines. You'd have to get MS-DOS box or something, and then maybe it would work. Maybe you got a chance to run it. So you had to have quirky machines or quirky setups to get a lot of the stuff to run. Nowadays, maybe it's different, but again, I don't know. There's a lot of different platforms people are still doing it on in unique platforms. So like even let's say if it's a Sega Genesis or one of those old machines, or somebody has an old Atari and people are doing Commodore 64s. The thing that the YouTube brings you is people now capture these and they post them online. So I could see these, and before I wouldn't be able to download and see half the stuff ever because nobody captured it. You'd say, okay, you have to have this machine and this setup, and you can watch this. So I think from that perspective, it's really good. It opens the door so I can see any of these demos. All the group or somebody that likes or follows the stuff has to do is record it and put it online and comment on it. So I think it's the next evolution. The demo scene isn't kind of dead. I do, because we did all these things, I like the physical media. I like, this is kind of my zine thing, is doing some kind of book. And
Mhm.
so I, I miss having something physical.
Collectible, yeah.
Yeah, something physical to hold, something to see. And it's, in a sense, we kind of consider that our demo in itself, right? It has the arts and it has,
Yeah, it's a demo pack. I considered when
yeah,
I was selecting the category on
yeah,
Puet, I
yeah.
called it a demo pack. Like they were on Amigas, there you on the disc you had multiple demos there. Mindcandy is one of those. Just it's a very big disc.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, that's the intent. And but I mean, we move on. We had CDs and music, and now people doing MP3s and people who do track music. I don't know if anybody does track music these
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
they
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People
I
still do
mean,
track music.
that's hard. That was hard back then, and it's incredible. I don't think people realize that this is tracked music and what it is and what it takes to do that. It's not like sitting down at a piano. That's one thing, but this is a different type of art. It's a different way of constructing and building music with samples and going through and clicking things in their trackers. So what's the next evolution? Well, obviously it's the streaming, but it's not physical. I mean, people could bring back the physical, and they are through these Kickstarters and Indiegogo and what have you to bring the book. So some people still do that, and they get funding up front, which is good because then that encourages
Less
them to,
risk. Yeah.
yeah, less risk. I mean, let's do a DVD and 20,000, but maybe it never gets made. I don't want to do that. I mean, we could do that, but I think everybody's beyond that point. And I don't know what the next evolution is beyond the streaming and the stuff that you're doing in the YouTube.
hmm Well, for me, I followed your steps in terms of the newsletter format. I love
Mhm.
the newsletter format because the disc mag felt like there was very big time lapse between each numbers. So that's why I like the newsletter format, and I pushed on it. And I made demo journal. When I read
Yeah.
that DemoNews was closing, I started demo journal, which now I read back and I cringe so much. It was one of the questions that I had for you. Do you read back on the first issues of DemoNews and go like, oh God, I can't believe I wrote this? Because I
Oh,
have
well,
that with demo journal. I feel so bad about the shit that I
it,
wrote.
it's been a while since I've gone
You
back, and
avoid
every
it
once in a
completely.
well, and I might, like, if you like this interview, I might go back and look at some of the stuff here and there. But no, I mean, again, it's an evolution. Everybody's going to start off, and it might be cringeworthy at first,
Mhm.
but you have to just keep going. And as we did each one of these products, I think it gets better, and you get more refined, and you know how to do it and edit, and that's kind of the normal process. I have
There are different schools of thought on that. Some people say that you need to, make the first issue really good and then you release, and other people just go for it. And I always been the go for it, and then you
yeah
fuck up, and next time you try better, and you
yeah
try
you,
to forget that you did the fuck up. But yeah, I still have discussions with some people about that, because they say, oh, okay, you need to do this very high product value thing, and then you push it out. Like,
well,
you're
you
not going to
want to,
get
but
traction out of that. You need you
the,
need to show people that you're working on something to get people to help you uh,
the and it
have that
may
out.
never get out there. It may never
Yeah.
get released. You may just stall it and tell it. I mean, there is no such. I don't believe really in perfection. You try to get close to it, and then you get it out there, and okay, then the next one I'll do better, and the next one
Hmm.
I'll do better, and you get better, and you refine it, and otherwise, you'll get this kind of lockup, and you'll never produce anything. So
Yeah,
get
I
something out
follow
there.
that mantra a lot. Also, with the YouTube content that I now do, I also try to focus down less work possible, but trying to get the experience and figure out the small things that we can do to make the next one better with less work, and learn a little bit from that and build on top of that and get some ideas out of that as well. So yeah, these are the most of the questions that I had for you.
Yeah.
Are you completely away from the demo scene? Do you sometimes have this idea of coming back and doing something again, programming a computer again, now that you're just
No,
a
no,
project manager?
definitely not programming. Yeah, there are so many better people than myself.
I mean,
N-
wasn't it just for fun that you're supposed to program? Isn't that the
y-
idea?
yeah, it's kind of like a hobby, like anything. But no, I mean, sometimes I think, hey, I kind of miss this artistic thing, but I'll have to take that artistic, the zine and the writing, and put it into something else, or something slightly different. So that's kind of where I'll go, but always have in my heart, the demo scene, and do enjoy it. And when you reach out or other people reach out, I'll always look back in and say, hey, what's new, what's up. I have no idea what's going on the parties and other type of scenes. I know.
There are a
J-
couple in the United States, small
mm,
ones, but there are a couple. There's Demo Splash at Carnegie
mm,
Mellon, I believe. There's
mm,
at Party in Boston, I believe,
mm.
and there was one in New York City that connected with. They did
Oh,
it
the
by train.
train.
Yeah,
Okay.
train mine. Synchronicity, I think it was called, or Synchrony.
Oh,
So
and Jim and others may attend those, maybe not. I know Jim does some Midwest, more of like a retro computer party there.
he was
And
involved in the organization of that, if I'm not
mm,
mistaken. You're talking about Trickster, right? Yeah.
yes, yeah, Jim
I,
Trickster.
I think he was part of the organization of that, and then I think he cut ties with it this previous year, because he was like looking for a reset on what he wants to do, because he wasn't taking joy out of that anymore. But
Yeah.
maybe he's gonna be active on it again. I don't know.
I think so. I shipped him a whole bunch of mind candies and just said, hey, just sell it for what you can sell it for, and let's kind of get rid of these. Let's find some people that are doing a book or doing some kind of Kickstarter, and offer these as additional incentives or
Hmm.
something. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
500 copies. It would be a
Uh,
shame to just let them bit rot away.
Right. I don't want to throw it away. So we want to, donate it or whatever to good causes, or if we can still sell them, it could just postage is costing like so much money. Just to ship it to Europe, it costs like $10, maybe
Yeah,
12.
that's ridiculous.
I mean, the DVD itself or the Blu-ray itself is like
Yeah.
$5. So we just want to at least pay for the DVD or the Blu-ray to meet minimum costs, and then the postage.
Mhm.
So,
Usual question that comes up when we're talking with American demo sceners: why isn't there an active American demo scene? Like, you had Nate Party, why didn't Nate Party keep going? Why didn't the American demo scene bloom to skyrocket and blow everyone away? So
I,
what's your I'm sure you have reflected on that for a lot of times, so
I'm
what's
gonna
your insight?
say just so many other things, distractions, right? And we always used to say, like back in the day, well, here they had the cable TV and everything else, and people would go into roller coasters, and maybe in Europe it was different. And
You also
I,
have roller
I,
coasters in
I don't,
Europe. I'm
I
sorry to
don't
let you
know.
know.
No, but and nowadays it's everybody's so distracted by all the TikTok. I think people migrated to, TikToks and YouTube and the phone, and there's so many distractions in life.
But
So I
that's
think
for the
it's,
newcomers. But what
yeah,
happened in the 90s demo scene in the United States?
you know, don't really know. Maybe it was more people were more into piracy and everything else like that. It's just not the same community. I
Hmm.
I always kind of wondered about the same thing as well. It's like, where are all the parties here? How come everybody's in Europe? And maybe some of that's attributed to some of the parties there. There's a lot of drinking, and here the drinking age is 21. So it
Hmm.
could be that people get out of high school and they could drink there in Europe, and here they can't. It's usually not until you're out of college, around 21.
Parties in Europe nowadays start not having that much of a drinking stigma associated to it,
Good, good.
which is good. I mean, we're also getting old, so
Yeah.
we're getting a bit more wiser. Um, but one of the reasons that I heard about the American demo scene being so lacking parties was also being so much geographically apart, so it
Mhm.
was hard to have like a local community completely active all the time. You would only have like half a dozen people, dozen people in a certain area, I guess a state,
Mhm.
um, and that would not be enough to have a recurring demo party going. Or that was one of the reasons that scared people from organizing demo parties,
It,
because there were not enough visitors.
I could
There were
see
a few
that.
demo parties happening throughout the years in the United States. There was
Mhm.
pilgrimage, there was a block party connected with Nauticon.
Mhm.
There were a few other things happening.
Nvidia, right? Nvidia did some
Nvidia
stuff.
also happened, yeah, but
Yeah.
they had to bring people from Europe to help organize it, which is a bit weird, to say the
It,
least.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe the other thing is the gaming side, and more people were into the gaming stuff
Hmm.
here. I mean, maybe it's equal there and here, but and if you really wanted to do a party, you'd kind of almost have to combine it with the gaming, and maybe Assembly does that in the last couple of years. But
Hmm.
maybe if you could combine it with something and bring in a mixture of people, so.
Okay. We have seen more demo parties happening associated with hacker culture in the United States, which is also cool. Like when there are hacker conferences, sometimes there's like a talk about the demo scene or showcase of demo scene. There was that Hope a few years
Yeah.
recurringly. Every time there's a Hope conference, there's been a demo scene corner there. So I think
Oh, nice.
that's a cool thing to have as well. And yeah, I wish there was more demo scene in the United States. That's my main. But I also wish there was more demo scene in Portugal. I also wish there was more demo scene in the world overall. So yeah.
I don't know how is it these days. I mean, is there many? Is there still continual demo parties? I know you put out your monthly newsletter and stuff.
Well, let me give you a rundown. This weekend that happened, there were two demo parties happening at the same time. Next
Mm.
weekend's going to be two more. So during the summer, usually there's like 10, 15 demo parties happening during the
Wow.
summer months. So yeah, it's still pretty much active, mostly still around Europe, but there's also a big scene. Well, big, it's active in Australia and Japan, which is really
Huh.
cool to see. And even Argentina, there's a demo party happening in Argentina for over 2 decades now, which is really
Er,
cool.
But who's attending? I mean, are there like a lot of
Local
50 and
people,
40 years old people, or is it like 20s, like back in the day when I was attending
more,
it?
it's the age average is older than back in the day for sure,
Okay.
so it's more like 30-40 year olds, but there's sometimes like some
Okay.
university people
Right.
also showing up. So yeah, so the age average should be around 30, I would say, maybe
Oh,
even
it's a
for
bit higher. Yeah.
30-ish, higher
Yeah.
parts of 30.
It's getting up there.
Yeah, that's my
Funny.
estimation. Actually, would be cool. We should measure that at the Inertia here in Portugal to see what our just to have like a framework of reference, because we have a couple of new kids,
Hmm.
but do they compensate for the old farts that show up?
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
yeah. So yeah, okay. That's all the questions that I had for you. Thank you so much for your time, Dan. It's
Okay,
just
thank
really
you,
cool
Felipe.
to hear your insight and to hear about all of these things. Is there is there a favorite demo that you remember from back then that you still would enjoy watching if you would watch
Mm,
again? What was like the most iconic demo that you remember?
I still like a lot of the Renaissance demos. Actually,
Okay,
American group, and of course some of the future crews, but those are really well refined. But a lot of the Renaissance stuff, I liked it. The old early 92s and stuff, 90, 91, 92, 93.
nice.
The
Okay,
music, especially the music.
they did a few music discs that were really popular back then.
Yep. So, so I'm old school. Sorry.
Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap
Okay.
up this interview. Thank you so much for
Okay.
your time again. It was a pleasure to have you. Yeah, see
Appreciate
you
it.
next time. Bye bye.
Appreciate
Take care.
having you on. Thank you. Bye. Take care.